game is just played. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40! Can't wait! Let's go!
All right, what's going on, everybody? It's another Tuesday, which means it's time for the big three. Once again, well, actually, not once again because Jake wasn't here last week. But we got Jake back with us. Still, the other members can't be here, but definitely got a great show in store for you. I mean, before we even get into all that, Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be back for the show. I had missed the last 2 weeks I was on a business trip, and that should be the last one I take for, until further notice. So I'm really excited that's done and over with. Really excited that we got a bunch of stuff going on. The college football playoff the ranking should be announced soon. NBA, we're kind of starting to see which teams are good, which teams are bad. And the NFL is just topsy-turvy. Like, it's so hard to predict. So a lot of good stuff to talk about, and really excited for the show.
Yeah. And even with baseball, not a lot of people are down with it, but
real quick on baseball.
Yeah, go ahead.
I am absolutely gutted that Craig Counsell. I'm a Brewers fan. Mm-hmm. He's a fantastic manager. I figured we were going to lose him. I figured he'd get a bigger payday because he deserved it, and we had cheap ownership. But he went to the damn Cubs, and I am just all the goodwill that I had to Craig Counsell. It was just like, you really had to choose the one team that we hate the most. Like, we hate the Cards, but like, it's the Cubs that we hate. Mm-hmm. I'm still gutted. I've only been a fan for like 3 years. Like, I haven't been a fan of the Brewers for a long time. And it's just put me in this funk. Whenever I think about baseball, I'm just like, damn it. Like, just. So congrats to him. As far as like, I think his contract was like $40 million, kind of resetting the manager market, which is good. The manager should get paid more. I'm always glad when people can get money, but of all, like, choose any of the other 28 teams and like go to the Mets. Cool. Go, even the Cardinals. So I'm gutted. I'm going to get that out of my system. Just kind of let it go and move on.
No, look,
it sucks.
I understand. When I saw it as well, I was a little surprised that the move going from the Brewers to the Cubs, because look, that's like when Johnny Damon went from Red Sox to the Yankees.
That hurt. I wasn't even a Red Sox fan back then, and that hurt.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, man, you can go anywhere else, but you had to go to New York with. It's his choice. Actually, Kerr coming in with Rangers 1-0 and just chilling here with a postseason run. Yeah, and the poor thing about it is, it was like the lowest rated World Series of all time. And I've said this about baseball. They are so bad about this. They just do not market well. I mean, look, yes, it wasn't like the Astros or Braves, Phillies, but there were names within this series that baseball should have been trying to pump up. Yep. I mean, Adolis Garcia, he got hurt, sure, but like, he was in the home run derby. He was a name. Corbin Carroll, young player, a name that you could market, and plus others on both teams. And it's just like, once we knew that this was the matchup, everybody in the baseball world was like, yeah, I'm not going to watch. I don't care.
Yep.
And it seemed like baseball was fine with that, and I just don't understand it.
No, it's a bummer. And, I've heard a lot of people say that, I can't speak to this personally because I just watch on Fox, but a lot of people have to watch things digitally through streaming. And it sounds like baseball just makes it more difficult than the other sports to try and watch it. And just get with the times, because that Rangers run was amazing. I watched the whole Orioles series, and Baltimore is a fantastic team. They're going to be really good next year, and the Rangers just dominated. I was watching. I was like, man, like, I think they're onto something there, and it's just a shame no one's gonna see it.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it is what it is. Baseball is seemingly the slowest of the major sports to kind of get with things. They just got kind of modernized with the pitch clock and everything. There's got to be somebody in the league office who's trying to figure out a way to make it more marketable. And I think, like you said, let loose some of the restrictions in terms of streaming and everything like that. Create a presence for yourself, because it's kind of the world we're in. People, are watching games and highlights and stuff like on TikTok and stuff like that. Baseball needs to get out of the golden days and get into the modern era. Look, I don't know. Sooner or later they'll figure out, I guess, because their sport is falling further and further behind in terms of popularity.
Yeah, but it's never going to go away. Like
Right.
they're always going to make enough money and everything, but they'll come around. That's just going to be 5 years behind it.
Hmm.
Football and NBA.
I keep telling people, if baseball's not careful, soccer will pass it by.
Yeah,
And
for
if
sure.
that happens, baseball people, I'm telling you, I warned you. So, but yeah, congrats to the Rangers, as Kerm said. That's his team. It was definitely. I'm always gonna root for teams when they can get like their first title.
Exactly.
I think it was definitely cool for the Rangers to do that because if you think about it, the Rangers have had great players throughout their history. They had Canseco at one point, Pudge Rodriguez, Juan Gonzalez. I mean, Nolan
Nolan
Ryan,
Ryan. Yep.
and none of those guys got it done, but this group was able to.
And
So,
also, it's cool for them because they had all those, what was in the early 2010s, where they were like one out, one strike away year after year for, I think it was like 2 World Series. They were right there and couldn't quite get it done. So it was cool to see them win it. Always happy when a team that never gets it. Now there's only a handful of teams that's never
mhm,
won a World Series. So congrats to them. And they should be proud. They got a killer team. They did it right.
yeah, yeah. And plus, for me, if my Red Sox don't win it, as long as it's not the Yankees. I mean, the Astros are kind of creeping up into that conversation for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Astros are very easy to not like. If it's not one of those teams, I'm kind of cool with it.
Yep.
And I was fine either way. If the Diamondbacks won it, I felt like that would have been, cool
That'd
for
be
them,
cool.
even though they've won it before. But
I was rooting for the Diamondbacks because they beat the Brewers in the first round of the playoffs. So at least I could have taken some solace there and be like, well, at least we lost to the champs. It was just in
yeah,
the first round.
yeah. But yeah, like I said, baseball's basically already moved on to Shohei Ohtani watch, which I get it because he's a generational talent and everything like that, and it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. I've been hearing a bunch of teams already. Like the Cubs are interested because I think they were interested
Yep.
before he chose the Angels. Everybody's obviously going to try to figure out ways to get into like New York or Boston or whatever. But hopefully it doesn't last that long because I would like to see it kind of get over with early. So then I guess some of the other free agents will probably be able to start signing. Because I feel like the longer it drags out, it's probably going to be the slower the hot stove for baseball will be. And I think that's kind of boring.
It is. Baseball should be marketing this up. They want it to be a little quicker, but they definitely want to be advertising and putting feelers out there, putting however you want to promote it, that this is the first free agent, big name free agent marquee that I can think of that draws national attention on where's he going to go. Almost like a LeBron kind of 2010 feeling like, where's he going to go? This generational superstar that just is like, and unlike anything we've ever seen. And now he
Mm-hmm.
can pick anywhere he wants to go. They should market it. They don't need to have a decision. You don't need to have it in some like kids community center and have a
Right.
whole hour thing, but you should market it to stir up interest for the people that really don't follow baseball. Be like, oh, hey, well, is he going to go to the Dodgers? Is he going to go to the Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, just to draw interest. So when it does happen, they can build interest on that team and maybe it carries over into March and April.
Yeah. Appreciate everybody who's in the chat. See, you got John in here. What's up? Like I said, Kurum, Key, Jory, what's going on? But yeah, so just wanted to get started with that. I don't think college football has done the ranking yet. Yeah. So, I mean, you did bring up LeBron. I mean, this wasn't even on the topic list because I was kind of going through TikTok and stuff, and I saw LeBron made a little statement that got Shannon Sharp all hot and bothered.
I haven't seen that. What was the statement? I can give
He
you
basically
my
said something
reaction.
like, without his time in Miami, he'd be the same player he is today. Which, like I said, Shannon Sharp kind of went off because he was saying it was because of the time in Miami is why he, Shannon Sharp and a lot of LeBron fans put LeBron into the GOAT conversation. And now for LeBron to say, without that time, he would be the same player, I guess the same status he is right now. I mean, I guess in some cases I could see what he's saying because I guess maybe stat-wise, he'd probably be the same player. Yes.
Yep.
But to a lot of the LeBron people, like I said, who are wrong when they put him in the GOAT conversation. Because look, there is no conversation. It's number 23 in Chicago. That's the end of the conversation. But I think it's interesting that LeBron, looking back on his time in Miami, feeling like he didn't really need that. Like, I guess how do you think LeBron would be viewed without the Miami years?
So if he didn't go to Miami, the hatred for LeBron doesn't start quite as bad because people would eventually get tired of him and they'd eventually find ways to root against him. Most people would. It's like that with almost any generational star. So the villainy that would happen wouldn't be there. We don't know what eventually I feel like super teams and the player empowerment era, whatever it calls player movement era, would still happen regardless. But it depends where he goes. If he stayed in Cleveland, he's not winning with that team. That team was garbage. They fell off a cliff after he left. They went completely into the tank. I don't know if he actually learns what it takes to be who LeBron really is. The biggest key really is how he rebounded from the 2011 finals, because people are always going to say, look, LeBron, you can't have him in the finals or the GOAT because of all the finals losses. And I think Michael Jordan's the GOAT. So just going to put it out there. Michael Jordan is the GOAT. I have LeBron at number 2, but and all of other LeBron James finals losses, there's good you can look at it and be like, it makes sense. He was the underdog. That team wasn't good, whatever it is. The 2011 finals is the one nitpick thing where you can be like, you guys should have won. That was bad. That was really bad. And he was able to grow from that and learn from that. And I think he learned a lot from Spoelstra. He learned a lot from Dwayne Wade, from Pat Riley. And I just don't know if he gets that kind of push if he stays in Cleveland, because in Cleveland, they're going to cater to LeBron. They're going to tell him LeBron's going to run the show. He's not going to let, forget the name of the Cavs owner. They went.
It was just
they butt heads all the time. He's not going to let him get over on him. But you know who LeBron is going to listen to is Pat Riley. And Pat Riley, I think, kind of pushed him, and it really turned the corner. And I don't want to hate to bring this up to you, but that Game 6 Eastern Conference Finals against Boston, felt like that's when LeBron finally got the monkey off of his back, where he's like, I'm the effing man. And I just don't think we get that if he stays in Cleveland or if he goes to Chicago. Those Miami years formed him. It's kind of like college. Dan Gilbert. Thank you, John. I was driving crazy. It's kind of like college. You stay there for 4 years, and for most people in your college years, it's your formative years where you grow into who you are. Now, if he'd gone somewhere else, is he still going to have great stats? Is he still going to probably find a way to win it somewhere else? Sure. But those Miami years were special. Those teams were great, and in my opinion, that was LeBron at his absolute apex. So that's my stance with that. I'm going to side with Shannon Sharp that you have to. They turned him into who they refined him. That's what I was looking for. They refined him into who he really is and who we view him as today.
I do think it's become a sympathetic figure, because if they consistently made the playoffs and fell short, obviously, people like Stephen A. and all those in the NBA media who love pushing stars out of cities to new horizons would probably talk a lot more about getting him out of Cleveland. But I think to the NBA fan, they would look at him and say, look, he's given everything he can. Gilbert and crew just don't know how to build a team around him. And I feel like that would have continued on, and maybe the frustration would have built up. He would have left anyway. I do think the Miami years with Pat Riley did show him what it takes to win. So that part of it, I don't know why he's dismissive of it. But once again, we may know the context of what LeBron was trying to say. I'm sure LeBron may be asked about it sometime at some point. But yeah, I think, I don't know, man. I do think when he got to Miami, that's when the hatred started, because of the press conference. That did it for me.
I was pissed. I turned on him.
I could not stand it.
And
it got to the point where I was rooting for them to fail.
Yep. Same here.
So
same here. I was mad. So when it happened, I think was 2010. So I was 22, 23, something like that. I was a huge LeBron James fan, even though the Cavs weren't my team. He goes to Miami. He has the press conference. They come out like they're for WWE or something with the smoke and the music and everything. And I was done. I was rooting for them to lose. I had a blog back in the day. I wrote a piece on it, and surprisingly, what changed me was that Game 6 against Boston. I wrote a piece on that afterwards, saying like it's time to stop hating LeBron because you're hating greatness. But a lot of people couldn't make that change. They couldn't get over that, and I totally get it. So I could see where they hate. We might be sympathetic, but let's also look at it like if you think about it, NBA player stayed in one city for a long period of time, was really good, never won. Kind of think of like Steve Nash, like Karl Malone. Like you view them as great players, but if LeBron James is wanting to be the GOAT, like you got to win. And if he's saying that he's the GOAT and he can't win it, like then I still think the hatred would still go there because of LeBron's just the way that he talks. And I think it rubs people the wrong way because he views himself as the greatest of all time, and people don't want to acknowledge that. But you can make the argument. I mean, if you're a really skilled debater, you can make the argument that LeBron is the greatest of all time. But for me, it's still Michael.
You can make the argument. Doesn't mean I gotta listen to you. No, okay. So my thing with that is, I think it's an argument that can be met. I am joking a little bit. My thing has always been, if I'm gonna have that argument with somebody, you gotta come with something. A lot of times, if I have that argument, they always say, "Oh, he's the scoring points leader." Okay, because he played 21 years. Eventually, he was going to get up there. It was whether or not he was going to pass Kareem or not. And it's a great accomplishment, yes, but that can't be your only reason. Because LeBron people always say, "Oh, you only picked Jordan because he's 6-0 in the finals." That's a big part of it, but no, because Jordan, if you look at his career, a lot of his prime, he was the best offensive player in the league, and you could argue he was the best defensive player in the league.
Defensive guard, you could say for sure. Defensive guard. There were a lot of really good centers, big men, but definitely best defensive guard. The only guard you can make the argument for maybe would be Gary Payton. Like that's it. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And I like go back to LeBron people and I say, how many times in his career could you say the same thing for LeBron?
There was one year he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know what year it was. I think it was
the
year
Marc
Gasol won it.
Yeah, the Marc Gasol year, yeah.
So there were a couple years where he was, but it wasn't at the level of Jordan, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I will say this, when it comes to the scoring thing, I get it, where people are like, he accumulated all the stats. LeBron, I think, is fifth in scoring points per game. Like, it's not like he's down there a lot, because it's Jordan, it's Wilt. I think Kevin Durant is a tiny bit higher, and there's one other person. I think it might be Jerry West. And they're all like a point and a half or a point, all within that set with him. So that's a counter argument. If you get ready for it, if they hear it, be like, well, he's fifth.
Yeah.
He's one of the best three scorers of all. He may not be the best scorer, but he's one of the best three scorers of all time.
Yeah. Trust me, it's an argument I love to have, because I do love frustrating LeBron fans.
I like making the argument both ways. Like, just like flip a coin and let me make the argument either way. That's always fun to do.
Yeah. We have, what's going on, Steve? Daniel Barry, Adam Early, what's up? So we have a couple of interesting questions here. So John says, since we were talking about Miami, who has helped LeBron more, Chris Bosh or, as he put, Mr. Glass, AD?
That's a really good question.
I think AD's getting more recognition. I feel like Bosh has been kind of like the forgotten guy in the Miami, trio, even though he sacrificed the most out of the three. And by taking on that role of basically being a perimeter player, when Chris Bosh was in Toronto, he was a do-it-all type of guy on offense. I might have to go AD, because I think AD, especially during the bubble run, he had moments there where he carried that team offensively. When they needed a big bucket, they threw it down to him in the post, and he got buckets for him. And plus, you throw in the defensive aspect of it, and I would take AD over Chris Bosh defensively. And especially with AD being a part of LeBron's career as LeBron's in the Army. But yeah, I'd probably say AD has been more of a help.
I would probably say it has to be Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is the better player. We know his availability is pretty rough, but Chris Bosh, like, he was a really good player. Unfortunately, with how everything works with those big threes, he was like you said, he was relegated to being a rebounder and kind of a stretch guy that really wasn't there. He did have that really big rebound in Game 6 of the 2013 NBA Finals,
Mhm.
but Anthony Davis is helped carry him. When Anthony Davis is healthy, he's absolutely fantastic. If he didn't get hurt in the 2021 NBA Finals, they probably go to the NBA Finals that year. He got hurt in the first round and they lost to Phoenix. So it has to be him. But argument could be made that Chris Bosh helped him get over there while LeBron James was still learning how to be that killer instinct, learn all those things that he did in Miami. But for me, it's Anthony Davis.
Let's see. Adam said Braun is outlasting Jordan by miles, which
Well, yeah, no
that's
duh.
that's just natural progression of medicine and everything like that. Players, Jordan came into the league what, mid '80s. You had guys out there like chain smoking, drinking every night, and then going out and playing a game. They didn't care about their bodies necessarily like today. Like LeBron dedicates so much time to his body. In the same way, we may look 20 years from now, we might have a player play 30 years in the league for all we know. Who
For
knows
real.
where it's going to go? So, yeah, that's an argument that LeBron people like to come up with. I don't care about that point. We had also Adam singing Christian Wood praises. I mean, you must be his agent up in here, but Christian Wood hit 2 clutch threes yesterday. He should be starting. And if Christian Wood starts at any time, the Lakers will be really good. I mean, that might be a question for a
Lakers just need to
Lakers fan.
figure out their starting lineup. It's still early. The thing is, the Lakers have a lot of good players. They have a lot of good dudes. They just got to figure out the right rotation. That just takes time. They've had a lot of additions, and it just takes time to figure out the right minute allocation for all the players.
John, that's like saying if Zion ain't hurt, Pelicans could go to the playoffs and make a deep run. Oh wait, that's another thing that I'm sure Pelicans fans are hoping for. I don't know if they'll ever get that though.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Zion comparison though is Anthony Davis has done it. We've seen him make a playoff run. We've seen him win the championship. Bubble or not, he was still able to go through it. And Zion is just the king of missing games. Like, he just misses games. Anthony Davis gets hurt, but at least he's hurt. Whereas sometimes with Zion, we just don't even know if he's hurt or protecting his body or what, or if he's even staying in shape. Anthony Davis at least stays in shape.
Right. Yes. I mean, I like getting on Anthony Davis as well. I'm not ready to put him in the Zion.
Oh, me too. No,
So,
Zion's in like his own tier, as far as that goes.
Let's see. I think I caught up on all the comments. Actually, while we were talking, the committee did come out with the rankings, and I do believe it's unchanged from last week. I'm just pulling up here really quickly because last week it was Ohio State. Oh wait, John's saying let's jump to replace Kerr. Yes, John, we're gonna get to that in a couple of minutes. I did see your comment from before because John already has some replacements for him. Why is it not pulling up? Hold on. Well, I guess we'll talk about the Steve Kerr thing while I pull up the playoff and all that.
Yeah, we can kind of, since we're still on basketball a little bit, sure.
Yeah. So John's comment was, who should replace Kerr for USA? He thinks Eric Spoelstra or Mike Brown from the Kings. I like that. Which would be high on offense, but since we've seen the struggle on defense against some of these Euro teams, I say Joe Mazzulla. John, you're kind of
not
running in my lane with the Joe Mazzulla thing. Although I wouldn't give him that job yet. Maybe down the line, but not right now. But yeah, so that was something that was on the topic list. Who do you think would replace Steve Kerr? Because as I said, after the 2024 Olympics, he's going to step down from Team USA. So obviously it's going to be, who will be the next guy? I mean, do you agree with John's Spoelstra or Mike Brown? Do you think there's another guy out there?
I agree with John those first two. If I'm making the pick, if I had the power to do that, it's Eric Spoelstra. I think he's the best coach in the NBA. He took a team that was an 8 seed. They had good players, but they clearly every series they were in, they didn't have the best team on paper, but he found a way to win. And they're what do you say? Whether you want to say their luck ran out against the Nuggets or they just matched up poorly against Denver, they fell short. But he consistently seems like he's able to make the right adjustments. Players listen to him. Players have a ton of respect for him, which is really important because you're dealing with, like, even though they're the Olympic athletes and they know they're playing for their country, they're still egos. It's not like what it was in 2000, 2004, but he's still really good. He's really, really well respected. I would go Spoelstra. John says that Mark Few from Gonzaga.
That
He's
was going to be
been,
the guy I was going to bring up. I was going to bring up Mark Few.
I could see that. I kind of like the idea of a college coach kind of being there to kind of, because it's different. Olympic basketball is different, so I could see him. Mike Brown, I really like as an idea, but I've just seen Mike Brown just lose a lot in his career, kind of underperform even with really good teams, whether it's with Lakers or Cleveland. So I'd go Spoelstra, or if not, Mark Few. Those are the two guys. If you want to go for good young coaches, like, I don't agree with Joe Mazzulla. Like, I'd rather have Matt Hardy from the Jazz, who came from that Boston lineup where he's really young, well respected. Maybe bring him on the coaching staff or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't choose Spoelstra, like, to me, it's just like a why. Like, he's the guy, and it's because of the respect for me.
John is literally coming up with all my people. I was about to say Ty Lue would be somebody I would think about.
I could see Ty Lue. I like that call.
John, I'm gonna need you to stop hacking my computer or whatever it is, because my two options was literally gonna be Mark Few for a college coach if you want to stay pro, Ty Lue. I think the Mark Few part is kind of obvious. He's been really consistent on the college level. I do think as Team USA is going to become a younger group, because after 2024, you got to figure guys like LeBron, Steph, and all those, probably their last run at the Olympics.
It's questionable if they should still be in the Olympics in 2024, given their age.
I agree with that as well. But hey, if they want to play, then I don't think
go for it.
Gonna say
especially
no.
Steph should play. Steph should play because he's never been in the Olympics. He should get that opportunity.
Steven did say Monty Williams. I would have been there with Monty Williams probably a couple of years ago. I don't know about Monty Williams right now. And John, come on, you wanted to say Kevin Nash. I mean, okay. I'm assuming that's, I guess, because of the hat, the backwards hat thing. I know it's Kevin Nash's look. But all right, I will come with other names. I'll give you Ty Lue and you said Steve Nash. I thought you were really going Kevin Nash with the wrestling reference, but Steve Nash, no.
That'd be something. That'd be something different. Come in there and give him like a 2 sweet or something, man. That'd be something else.
I mean, yeah. Bill Self would be an interesting if you want to go college, because Bill Self at Kansas has been very consistent. I think he would be a good bridge between, younger players and even older players because of his longevity at Kansas and within the college coaching game. That's actually a good one.
You know who's someone that could be good if they were still coaching? I don't know. I'm pretty sure he retired. Was Villanova's head coach? It was Jay Wright. I think he would have been really good.
I thought Jay Wright was always in the mix for a while. Yeah,
me too, because he's a younger guy. He's able to recruit well, and he's able to build systems out of players that are like, he makes the sum is greater than the parts, or whatever that saying is. Like, he brings guys together. So I always was kind of thinking, 3 or 4 years ago, he would eventually be the guy. So I could have seen that happening. Yeah.
I mean, if I wanted to get really crazy, I say give it to the TNT crew and just let them go crazy with it. Imagine Chuck, Shaq, and Kenny trying to run Team USA. It'd be hilarious.
The only guy I trust of those four would be Ernie. Like, I'll just be completely honest.
Steven said Tom Izzo. I think Tom Izzo's a guy.
It's kind of maybe passed him by.
Years ago, I think I think the time has kind of passed on Tom Izzo. I'm trying to think of like maybe younger NBA coaches who might get that opportunity. Because you said
the better question is,
what about
who do you bring on the staff?
Quinn Snyder.
Quinn would be really good. Quinn is really well respected. He's got a lot of connection to a lot of players. Bring him on the staff. Everyone always just assumes that Quinn Snyder's a defensive genius because Utah's teams were so good defensively for so many years. But historically, he's an offensively based dude. He just had really good defensive players. So he could get it to work. He could get people to buy in, bring him on the coaching staff 100%.
All right. So I was going to say, only because we weren't going to talk about it too long, but just to let you know, the college football playoff, it is Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State. Still the same top four. Washington and Oregon are still 5 and 6, so it's not really much else that needs to be said about that. John says, for the love of God, not Doc Rivers. I cannot honestly
Rivers,
tell you, not really have to worry about Doc Rivers getting that job.
Nope.
Yeah, so I do like the Mike Brown. I think it would be cool because of what he's doing in Sacramento. But I could see Mike Brown being on the staff for the next coach, which I guess we could probably talk about. Because, usually that coach brings on like 2 or 3 kind of NBA coaches to kind of go with them. So I guess if you were running Team USA, I guess if you're Jerry Colangelo and it's after 2024, how would you pick the coaching staff for Team USA? So who would be your coach and let's say your top 2 assistants?
Okay, so if I get 2 assistants, I'm taking Spoelstra as my head coach. Okay. I think his respect, that every player respects him. He can get he has the gravitas, the charisma to go into a player's face and be like, look, dude, you're screwing it up. We need you to focus, this, that, whatever. And then if I'm going for assistants, I really like Mike Brown as an assistant. He's always thrived as an assistant. You never find a player say that they don't like Mike Brown. He's a great assistant. And I like the idea of Quinn Snyder. He's a younger coach. Get him in there where he could possibly grow into this role of potentially being the next head coach that would replace Spoelstra, or at least stay on the staff. Again, very dynamic thinker, really good at making adjustments, really good at communicating, and holds players accountable. All Spoelstra and Quinn Snyder both hold their players accountable. There's like when Snyder was the head coach for the Utah Jazz, who are my team, you could look up anytime, he would just be yelling at his players, like losing his mind. People say he looked like he was high on coke because he was just crazed. Like, you want guys that are intense and can hold guys accountable, and I would want him on my staff. So it'd be Mike Brown, Quinn Snyder on my bench, and then Eric Spoelstra as my coach.
John said Budenholzer as an assistant. Look, I am not a Budenholzer guy.
I'm not. Nope. What's your staff looking like?
I mean, I'm going Joe Mazzulla as my heck. No, I'm just kidding. I would probably say I'm kind of intrigued with the Mark Few part. So I'll go Mark Few as my head coach. Okay. I'll have Ty Lue as one of my assistants. And I might go Mike Brown as the second assistant.
That's a great staff. That's a great staff. Good one,
but I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's a Heat coach and Heat and Boston have this thing going. I don't know.
I can respect that. I can respect the hate you have for the Heat, and with your staff that you listed, like, you can make your argument that you have the right staff, and that's all you need to do. Just like we can each make the argument, so we pick the right staff, and that's all we have to do.
Yeah. So since we did talk college football like two snaps, Steven's saying, who you guys picking, Michigan or Penn State? I'd probably go Michigan. I think Penn State could make it tough.
I think Penn State. I think Michigan's finally gonna have some karma with the sign stealing stuff that's going on. I don't like Penn State. I had the scandals that they've had in the past. I don't like them, but I think this is a time where Penn State's gonna win, and Michigan is everything's gonna kind of collapse. I think this weekend. It's not going to come in against Ohio State. It's going to come early. It's going to come this week against Penn State. But who knows?
All right, so John has Penn State.
It's going to be a good game either way.
Yeah. And Steven said, hope Ole Miss beats Georgia. Look, I feel like there's been a couple of weeks where you could say Georgia's been shaky, but they've just been finding ways to win in the second half. I just don't think, even though Georgia hasn't been dominant with their wins, I just still think that they are kind of the best team in college football right now. At least until we get to the playoff, depending on who the other three teams are. I'd probably say Georgia's probably going to be the favorite. It's kind of
Yep.
boring, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Now, the struggle with Georgia, and I agree, Georgia should be number one. The thing is, there have been moments that have kind of weak, moments where they haven't looked like the Georgia we've seen for the past 2 years, and their schedule's been kind of soft. Like they haven't had a really tough schedule. Where you look at some of these other teams like Ohio State that's beat Penn State, Florida State's had they've had a couple good games. Washington's had some good teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're just kind of waiting for Bama to wait for what, the SEC championship game. Is that kind of what we're waiting on, for them to play Alabama and see how that goes? So I could see that, but there's, to me, eye test wise still matters, and they're still the best team in college football. The real question with these rankings for me is the fourth spot. Do you have Florida State or Washington? Who do you think should be in that last spot? Because I think the top three are pretty well defined. Like those are the three best teams that
Yeah.
we've seen. Michigan, Ohio State are both really good. They have some really good wins. Question then is, like, do you have Florida State? Who do you like better, Florida State or Washington?
I mean, I'd probably go Washington, and I may even say Oregon after Washington before Florida State. I don't know. Florida State's been teetering for me, but obviously, if they make it to the end undefeated, you'd probably have to give
You
it
have
to
to
them.
make it. You have to give it to them.
Yeah,
Unless
and
all these, well, I guess Michigan and Ohio State play each other, so one of those two teams isn't going to be undefeated. So yeah,
mhm,
like it kind of makes it like a default. But I'm with you. I think Washington should be the fourth seed. They've played a much tougher schedule. They I know they beat USC, and USC's kind of fallen down, and it was a close
yes,
game, but they beat Oregon. It was at home, but it's still Oregon. Last time I checked, Oregon is ranked sixth. They're the
hmm
top ranked one seed, or one loss team rather. Like, give that should carry more weight than what Florida State has done. I
hmm
really like what Washington has done. I think they should be the fourth seed. Look, I like Florida State. I spent some time down near Tallahassee, so I know a lot of Florida State and their fans and everything. But to me, if you compare the quality of schedule, Washington's schedule is just, and the results from it have just been better.
let's see. So John said, don't sleep on Kentucky versus Alabama. Then Utah will beat Washington if Utah plays like they did last week. I think Utah is definitely going to be a very tough matchup for Washington.
It is.
And unless Florida State loses to Clemson in the ACC championship or loses to UNC, Florida State will get knocked out.
They'll probably be one of the teams that lose, because if they go undefeated, Michigan or Ohio State go undefeated, so they would go up to three. Like, and then Michigan, Ohio State would be the two seed. We can assume Washington goes undefeated. They're the three seed. Like, I don't know. Think about how Ohio State plays Florida State. Ohio State's going to win. I think they're tougher, they're faster, and they're more physical.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with 1, 2, and 3, they distance themselves so much that even if, I guess with Ohio State 1 and Michigan 3, if Ohio State like obliterated Michigan in the final week, maybe Michigan falls out of the top 4. But if that's a close game, I think those two automatically make the playoff, as long as that they're both undefeated at the time of that matchup. So yeah, the fourth spot is the only one that's really shaky right now.
Yep.
And for Florida State, they have to understand that it is razor thin for them. The minute they
Yep.
lose a game,
They're done.
they're dropping way down.
Yep. And if Washington remains undefeated and they beat Utah, then they have another game in the Pac-12 championship game. Could very well be another matchup against Utah. Florida State has to realize they might not just have to win out. They might have to win with some gusto and some big performances where they're blowing teams out. When they play UNC and they play Clemson, they look good. They don't just win by 3 or 4 points. They win by 14, 21, 28 points to really make a statement that they're deserving of that last spot.
Yeah. And it's also interesting that, kind of looking at college football in general, a couple of the teams that had a lot of hype early in the season have completely fallen off, because you brought up USC, Colorado, Notre Dame has kind of fallen off now.
Yep.
It's been an interesting college football season. Look, I'm still waiting for next year with the 12 team, because just looking at the rankings right now, if you technically had the 12 team in place, I mean, you're looking at what Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Bama, Ole Miss, Penn State, Louisville, and then I guess the group of 5 team would be Tulane.
That's a
Which obviously Tulane doesn't fit with the rest of them, but those
That's
other
a
11 teams,
that's a
pretty
pretty
good.
that's a pretty good football, man. Like when I've always heard like 12-team playoff back in the day, back when we saw the BCS going on, I
Mhm.
was pretty against it. I was like, I don't know, too many teams, you're gonna get like these wonky little wins. But when you look at it like this season with how so many good football teams that we have, it's like, man, those are some good matchups that we're gonna see, and it would make it more people would watch as opposed to the Citrus Bowl or the Outback Bowl. It's bowl games where people miss out, people
Mhm.
don't play, and like they're cool to watch, but they're not must watch. If it's a playoff, it's must watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I am all for the expansion. You know, I've also thought, why stop at 12? Let's go 16. Let's
Oh
go
man,
32. I don't care. I mean, 32 would be kind of crazy.
30. You can't have an unranked team in
That
the
would be
freaking
kind of
playoffs,
hilarious.
man.
Hey, you go to 32, maybe BC's got a chance. But I feel like 12, 16. I thought it was definitely a good place to be. Coming if you went to 16, now you're pulling in teams like Oregon State and Tennessee, which that's fine. But yeah, 12 I think is definitely a good spot for college football. And kind of like you when people were like, keep it at 2 because you kind of watered down the regular season. Then it was keep it at 4 because you're just gonna no. Those names I just called are all big name brands. And I think even if you look at the bowl season, the bowl games that people only really pay attention to are the ones that have the big name schools playing against each other. So what's the
Yep.
difference between that and a playoff setting? I never understood that argument from college football fans, but then again, they're an interesting group, college football fans.
It's tradition. The diehards and the people that make all the decisions in the NCAA. It's tradition of the bowls. I mean, by the time I started watching college football, BCS system was already well into place. So I
Mhm.
I remember I was 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that range where I started actually following and understanding college football and how it differs from the NFL. And I was like, wait, there you can have split national championships. Like,
Yeah.
well, it was when LSU and USC had a split championship, and I think it was 2002 or 2003. And I was talking to my dad. I was like, "That's weird." He's like, "Well, it happens all the time." I was like, "What do you mean it happens all the time?" And my mind was blown that
Hmm.
we were in 2003, and like it took that long to get away from split national championships.
Yeah.
So college football does. It's kind of like where baseball is a little slower to evolve compared to the NFL. But yeah, give me these 12 teams because honestly, like I'm not going to watch bowl games because during the holidays because I'm usually so busy. But if there's a 12-team playoff, I'm going to be making time to be watching those games. Maybe I can't watch the whole game because family, whatever, but I'm at least going to be
Hmm.
catching parts of it. Whereas again, if it's the Citrus Bowl, even if it's two of these teams, two top 25 teams matched up, uh, half the players aren't going to be there, and there's nothing. It doesn't lead to anything. So I'm not going to make time out of it during the busy holiday season.
Right. Um, John said, I mean, look at James Madison. And this has been the reason why I've wanted expanded playoff because college basketball seems to love seeing Mercer beat Duke, celebrate it. College football hates that.
Yep.
I don't know why, but I do think because of some of these smaller schools that can have a year like, Coastal Carolina a couple of years ago was ranked at one point, but you knew they were never going to get a chance at a playoff. And I feel like because there's so many schools out there, just giving a spot or two to one of these smaller schools, I do think makes it exciting. Because
What?
on the off chance that let's say, I guess we'll take like Tulane this year. Let's say Tulane went up against Washington and knocked them off. That's a big deal. Not only for Tulane fans, but other college football fans that are even smaller schools will be like, that means if we get in, we may actually have a shot against one of these big boys. While
Yep.
the traditionalists will say, like, oh, it's a fluke. It just means that, Tulane got lucky. So what?
They still
Embrace
won.
it. Embrace the unpredictability.
Yeah. I mean, while you think about that, the best example I can think of for why this is so good is think back, I don't know, 15 years ago to when Boise State started their run. Started with
Yeah,
the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma, where they went undefeated. And then they had those years where there was them and TCU kind of rising up the WAC and the whatever conference, Conference USA, I think was what TCU was in, kind of rising from the ashes. And everyone knew Boise State wasn't going to get a fair shot into for the championship, but they were a really good team and they had a lot of really good players. People like to watch that. With this kind of system, we could see what Boise State would have done, what a TCU like that back in the day would have done.
yeah,
And John, you're 100% right. I don't care who beats Duke; it's always going
yeah.
to make my day.
Yeah. And Johnson brought up UCF. UCF had a couple of year run in there
Yep,
where they
absolutely.
were a really good team, but was never going to get a shot at a playoff because the committee was never going to give it to them. So now with 12 and the fact that one spot goes to a group of 5 champion, now at least we get to see what they can do against the big boys and whether they can knock them off. Just trust me, the first time that happens, the traditionalists are going to lose their mind, and I'm going to be sitting there laughing because it's just going to bring joy to my life.
Oh yeah, what's a terminology where like they're crying and you just like take their tears and like make it into a soup or something like that, just soaking it in. Like I'm gonna
Yeah.
love it. Like the same thing when Boise State beat Oklahoma, because I lived for a year in Idaho, so Boise State was going crazy. Oklahoma, everyone lost their mind, and everyone and all the Boise State guys are like, yeah, well, I'm just going to enjoy it. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
That unpredictability is fantastic, and you make a great point of college football or college basketball loves these upsets and the Cinderella stories, but college football hates it, and I can't think of any logical reason why.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
It's just weird. Consider it's both college sports, but one section loves it, and the other one was like, hey, give me Notre Dame and Alabama every year and I'll love it. It's like, no, who wants to see that year after year? I mean, we're getting to the point where it's basically Georgia, Alabama every year. Look, it's a great game, but needs some new blood in there.
It gets a little stale. It gets, even for the fans like I've lived everywhere. So I've said like I lived near Tallahassee, lived in Boise. I also lived in Southern Alabama before. It was right when Saban first got hired. So everyone's like, "Hey, you got to pick Auburn, Alabama." I picked Alabama. Like even as a person who has like, I like Alabama. I have a lot of friends and people that I really care for that are in Alabama that are Bama fans. Even I'm like, come on, like we need fresh blood. Like we need some change. It gets kind of stale
Mm-hmm.
because it's just the same thing over and over. And look, I get that the SEC is dominant. It's the most dominant conference I think we've ever seen, but we need some new blood, and a 12-team playoff is going to allow for the upsets where it's not going to be Georgia just needing to beat 2 teams to get the championship. They're going to have to go through a gauntlet and potentially get upset by any number of teams.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably the 12-team playoff will kind of hurt some of the SEC bias because it's still going to happen because they love kind of over-ranking SEC teams to build like Georgia and Alabama's resume. But at least now it's not because they're trying to keep them in the top 4. Now
Right.
with 12 teams, it's just going to open it up and
Yep.
a bunch of schools will get in anyway. All right. So I guess before we go on to our next topic, which will go to the NBA and, the guy who calls himself the system, got a quick word from the network.
What's up, everybody? It's Cottrell Simpson with Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, where we're going to cover all things breaking news, sports related. We're going to preview games, and we're also going to give you our reaction to games that have happened before. You can catch us on Wednesdays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if you miss us there, no worries. You can also catch us on Roku with Northeast Streaming Sports Productions from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Hey, and listen, if you're not into all sports and just NFL, we have Sideline to Sideline. That's on Thursday nights from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8 p.m. We'll break down the NFL week, the Thursday night game, and we'll preview all NFL action.
And if you're like me and college football is your fix, tune in every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Coast to Coast College Football pregame show. We'll review the previous week's action, the day's biggest games. We'll give you our pick'ems, and we'll even give you some teams that are on upset alert.
And if you don't catch us live, you can download us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We do also have a YouTube station, Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
All right. I mean, that's definitely a great show, Wire to Wire, which you catch on the network Wednesdays. So we had a couple more comments. Gregory, who's one of the favorites in the chat, SEC. I mean, I get it, especially as somebody who grew up with the Big East. Hearing all this love for the SEC is definitely
rip to the Big East, man. That
I hated that. That hurt.
hurts. I grew up on the West Coast, man, and it still hurts when I think about it. Grew up as far as you could in the country from it.
Yeah. Steven rooting for Ole Miss beating Georgia. All right. But yeah, so now let's go ahead and get to the man, the myth, the system, James Harden.
Oh gosh.
I mean, he made his debut with the Clippers, so at least you could say he's been on the court. So looking at it, and Greg saying he's Big 8. I mean, that's
okay.
That's
back
older
in the day.
school right there.
There we go.
Kerm, glad my brother forced me to root for UT because he went there. Okay. But yeah, so James Harden is now with the Clippers. He definitely can put the Phillies situation behind him. He's no longer on the leash. He's free to do what he wants to do with the Clippers. I feel like if you look at them on paper, if you're just looking at the box score and you see, I mean, box score, that's an old reference. For those of you, pull out a paper, you look at the box score, that's how you did it back in the day. But you're looking at Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Paul George, Russell Westbrook. I guess maybe 5 to 10 years ago that might have done something to you. But what do you think is the best and worst case scenario for Harden and these new look Clippers now?
Best case scenario for this Clippers team is, I mean, I'm talking very best case is the Western Conference Finals.
Okay.
That's the best they can do. They don't have the tools or the guys to go up against Denver. I think it's pretty obvious. So, I mean, I know the NBA season's young, but Denver looks like the team to beat in the Western Conference. They have Jokic is still the best player in the league. I have a bias towards Giannis because what I saw him do in the finals against the Suns, was legendary. But you have to give it to Jokic. You have to give it to him. He's the best player in the league. It's not even close. His passing, his ability to just affect everything on the game. He's great. They have really good players around him. This is a team that they won the title. No one's talking about them. They didn't lose a ton of players. They lost some guys, but they brought back the whole core, and they're just ready to just take numbers and took notice to the disrespect that they got in the media. Jamal Murray, I think, is really showing that he is a top guard. And there's a lot of really good players, but that pick and roll with him and Jokic is devastating. They don't have the tools. I mean, if they all stay healthy, who's their best defender? Like Paul George, but he's getting old. He can't quite hold up. He's got injuries. He's not the same guy that he is. James Harden doesn't play defense. Russell Westbrook, as intense and as athletic as he is, we've seen him time and time again just blow defensive assignments. And Kawhi Leonard, he's just not the same guy anymore. He doesn't look like the guy from the Spurs. He doesn't even look like the guy from the Raptors. You watch him play, and he looks like a guy that's aged pretty bad. He's going to miss a bunch of games, and I think realistically, they're probably a second-round team. They're a team that's going to probably be anywhere from the 4th seed to the 6th seed, and they'll win a playoff series if they're lucky. This team could flame out. Now, worst case scenario is injury bugs hit them hard, where Kawhi misses 20 games, Paul George misses 20 games, and Russell Westbrook and James Harden have to learn how to play together again. Didn't really work out in Houston for that 1 year that they played together. And James Harden, like, what does he do in that scenario? I don't like the trade. I don't know why they gave up everything that they did. I don't think James Harden's an impactful player that he thinks that he is. He's a really good passer, but the comments that he says makes it feel like he wants to go and be the James Harden from Houston, where he has the ball, his usage rate is an all-time high, pounds the rock, tries to score, or tries to get bailed out by the refs. That's just he can't do that anymore. Not only is the league changed, he's not athletic enough for it. So they could just completely flame out and miss the playoffs because the West is really deep. But I think realistically, it's best case scenario in a realistic sense is second round, but they could maybe get lucky with their matchups and make it to the Western Conference Finals. But they're not a finals team, in my opinion.
Okay. So that's even with, like I said, the best case scenario would be Kawhi's completely healthy, Paul George healthy. Still think just Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I don't think.
You?
Yeah,
I agree. I just don't see them, making the finals at all. And I do agree with the worst case scenario because we saw this in Philly and in Brooklyn. When you got to Brooklyn, everybody's like, "Oh, Durant, Kyrie, Harden, who's going to stop that?" Harden didn't know that Kyrie was going to go on his media whirlwind tour and become a part-time player, which once that happened, Harden checked out because at that point he knew he had to do more and he wasn't going to Brooklyn to do that. So I do think if Kawhi's knee becomes bulky and PG's missing games here or there, we will start hearing rumblings about Harden, not being happy or being lied to about his experience in LA. even though I'm just like, I would love to see Ballmer put a team together and actually win a title because I just want to know how that man's gonna celebrate it. Like he's jacked and pumped on a regular night in November to watch the Clippers. If they win it all, I don't know. He might
have a heart attack.
He may go on a hot air balloon and just throw money down. I don't even know at this point what he might do. And he seems like an owner that players would love to play for. He's enthusiastic. He's willing to do
cares about his
whatever
team. He wants to win.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that his teams just have not been able to do it. So I agree that the best case is Western Conference Finals, and that's with, certain matchups being in place. We got Rod in here. Yes, Mac Jones. I mean, we will get to that a little bit later. John said, give me the Nets tonight with the Clippers. I will say the Nets, I said this, the Nets after Durant, Kyrie, and everything, they have a decent team. They're actually fun to watch.
They are fun to watch. And they were fun to watch before Kyrie and Durant got there, too.
Yeah. And they may not win a title. They may not be a top 4 seed, but they're a team that, talking about the Nets here, that when they play, like they give it all out. They shoot pretty well from the perimeter with Bridges and Cam Thomas, who, because those guys aren't in the way anymore, Cam Thomas has free reign to kind of do what he wants, and he's showing that he's a really good scorer in this league. John also said best team to watch is the Magic. Magic are fun to watch as well.
Yep.
But yeah, getting back to Clippers, it's just like
back to the Clippers.
Look, I get why Ballmer did it.
Do we want to put an over-under?
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
On what wins?
Sorry, I think my internet lagged out a little bit there.
Oh, okay.
No, over-under for when James Harden quits on this team. Like,
okay,
I'm being a little facetious. I'm being a little bit of a smart ass here, but like realistically, because he's quit on 3 teams in 4.5 years. Like, how long is it before he gets pissed off and doesn't like this? How does James Harden and Russell Westbrook interact? Because they didn't do well in Houston. We're going to see probably more times than not of Russell Westbrook coming off of the bench just because of the way that their roster is going to be built. Like, how is that going to go? What happens when Kawhi Leonard decides to not show up to games? Like, is that going to piss James Harden off like it did when Kyrie did it? Like, I don't see. I understand a little bit why they had to do it, but James Harden's just not. He's not the player that he once was. He's not the player that he was in Houston. He doesn't take care of his body. He's not a good defender. And I don't remember the whole context of this, but I was listening to some sports radio, and someone mentioned that during the summer they had an interview with Doc Rivers, and he said that after the All-Star game, James Harden's mentality changed because he didn't get invited to the All-Star game. And he went from a facilitator and a kind of a floor general, which he's really good at. He's a really, really good passer, and tried to be more scoring. And I don't know if that's where that leash comment kind of came from. But if he did that in Philly, where they were looking like they could be a legitimate contender, you have to worry about his ego getting in the way. And there's a lot of egos on that Clippers team, starting with Steve Ballmer, as you know, and deservedly so for everything that he's done. I could see this team just imploding 100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good point. And look, if times get tough in LA, the one person I'm actually not worried about is Russell Westbrook.
Nope.
Because he's that guy
cares.
they could be a 9-win team and he will go out there night in and night out, and in his mind will be, I'll get this team back to the playoffs. Kawhi, we know if that happens, he'll shut it down. I think Paul George will probably be closer to Westbrook, but I don't even know if he has that in him. And we already know about Harden. He'll be, throwing in trade requests or whatever.
No, Westbrook kind of plays like it's whenever he hits the court, it's almost like this could be the last time I ever play. I need to give it my all. Like, especially in I think it was either 2020 or 2021. I think it was 21 when he was with the Wizards and they had that play-in run and he was putting up all those good stats. Like, he cares. And the reason why he got so much flack for the Lakers wasn't because of skill. It was because of fit. Yes. And when it happened, I knew it was a bad fit. It wasn't going to work. But he played well, and you know he's going to care, and he's going to be the last guy that's going to quit. James Harden and Kawhi, you have to worry about them quitting. I guess the only counter argument you could make is Ty Lue could be a little harder on him and hold him more accountable, and because he is pretty good with that. But you really have to worry when times get tough. How does this team respond? How mentally strong is this team?
So I guess to answer your over-under, I'd say by the trade deadline.
Oh, that's early. I'm going to say by like a year from now. I think by December of next year, he's going to want out. He's going to be done. Especially if, someone in the chat mentioned all the free agents. I think John mentioned that Kawhi, Paul George, Russ, they're all going to be free agents. We know Harden's going to get an extension. That's kind of like a wink, wink for there. If he's the only guy that's there and the team sucks, like he's going to request out. So I could totally see it. I think if he's on the team by the end of 2025, I'm going to be shocked. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and the Clippers have that new arena. They'll finally be out of the Lakers' shadow. They can finally start to build their own brand.
Physically.
Right, yes, of course. Walking down the street, you're still going to see a lot of Lakers fans. John asked, do you think the Knicks will make a move for Cat or Edwards? I know he's not talking about me.
No.
It's got to be Cat. Look, the Celtics played the Timberwolves last night. I was watching the game. Karl-Anthony Towns just does not fit at all with that team, especially once they brought in Gobert. Yeah,
nope, doesn't fit.
So if they're kind of stuck with Gobert, you got to move Cat. Anthony Edwards is their future. There's not a chance they should move unless
they're not
trading. And says he wants out.
They're not.
He does that, then yeah, he's gonna stay. It's got to be Cat.
No, it's going to be Cat because the thing is Minnesota can't trade Rudy Gobert because that would be this organization admitting not even a year and a half in that they messed up. And we all know that they messed up. We know that was the Jazz fleeced him. That was the worst trade. I love it as a Jazz fan. Look, I liked Rudy Gobert. I defended him for years, but you can't trade him. Everything you gave up, you can't trade him. Like Krem said, it's Anthony Edwards' team. He's the man. He's the future. Karl-Anthony Towns. I've never been a huge Cat fan. I make the argument he's a good stats, bad team kind of guy. Where you look at what he does in the playoffs and in the clutch, he doesn't demand the ball. He's not very physical, not the best defender. But you look at his box score and you're like, damn, this guy's really good. You look at it, fantasy and 2K stuff, he's really good. So if they're going to make a trade between those two guys, it's going to be Cat. The question I think should be, do the Knicks go for Cat or do they wait to see if Embiid decides and wants out of Philly? And who would they rather have there? Because Embiid's the better player, but you have to worry about his health, his knee, because he's getting older, especially with his size. I think that's a bigger question because there's no way that Minnesota's trading Anthony Edwards unless they get a king's ransom.
Yeah. John also said, rumor is John Wall wants to join the Suns. Do you think that could work? I mean, there's rumors in the offseason that Wall could have been a Celtic. I do definitely think that there's a place for John Wall in the NBA. I mean, Phoenix could work because at least John Wall is a legit point guard, whereas right now, what do they have? They're expecting Bradley Beal to become a point guard, and that's once
and
whatever
he's
his
not. He's
back
not going to
issue
do that.
is figured out. So yeah,
He-
I can see John Wall with Phoenix. I think that would be a good fit for him, and I do think it would work. I think John Wall has kind of figured out, what his game is as he's getting older. He's not going to be the greatest shooter. He still has the speed with the ball, which I think
No.
probably works in Phoenix because there will be times where he could be a one-man fast break and get you easy buckets that way. So I do think if that does happen, that would be a good move for Phoenix.
No, it would be a good move. I don't think John Wall is going to go to any like meandering team. He's going to want to go to a team where he can have an impact. And another reason why Phoenix makes a lot of sense is he had all those years in Washington with Bradley Beal, and we know those two are very close.
Mhm.
Everything, at least that I've heard, is that they're very close, very good teammates, and they could work really well together. You do have to worry about the injury. He's not a good shooter, but with the other good shooters they have on the team, they could probably work around that. They need someone that could pass the ball, and he's a good passer. He's had numerous seasons where he's averaged over 10 assists a game, so he could do that and probably come in on a cheap contract. So I could see that happening. The thing I'm not going to see is him going to a team like Utah or Portland or some of these other teams that are rebuilding and not going to be there because he's made his money. The dude's rich. He just wants to have a chance to get a ring and play meaningful basketball.
Yeah. And, another, I guess to go back to the Knicks really quickly, I guess another thing the Knicks have to decide is, do they wait for Donovan Mitchell? Donovan Mitchell seemingly wants to be there. Could they make a deal with Cleveland? Probably not. Do they wait it out and try to get him in the offseason? But then at that point, you're kind of bidding against other teams who may want him. I don't know if that's going to factor into anything that they decide, but just to go off of John's thing. So I guess at that point, maybe it's like, can they get Cat out of Minnesota, kind of played out this year, and then you add Donovan Mitchell in the offseason. Now you're looking okay, but I don't know. The Knicks will be an interesting case study because, look, they still have the Julius Randle problem. I don't know if they'll ever be able to solve that. But if they are able to move on from him and bring in somebody, I don't know. Maybe the Knicks could surprise some people. Send him to the Spurs for Pops last year. I mean, I feel like Popovich right now is just living the good life with Wemby, and he's kind of happy right now.
Yeah, he's happy, and he's developing a team. No one's expecting much from him. Just let him enjoy it. You don't need to see John Wall there. But it's all about development for the Spurs. That's all this year is. You don't need old veterans on that team.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of interesting with John Wall. Because when I heard the rumor about him with the Celtics in the offseason, that didn't pan out and then heard nothing from him. So if he's still working on his way to get back, I hope he signs somewhere.
It would be cool. I guess you have to worry, though, like, when's the last time he played actual meaningful basketball? Because he played, I think his last team was Houston that he played for, and then they ended up cutting him. And we know Houston was losing. They were kind of in the tank and all that stuff. But no one picked him up. And executives and scouts, they know more. They have more information than we do. They generally know more than we do most of the time. And so you're kind of wondering, like, okay, is there something that we just don't know? Are we holding on to this vision that John Wall could turn back to 75% of what he used to be, and that'd be good enough? And maybe he's more at like 50% after all those injuries and the age that he's had. So we have to wait and see. It'd be great to see him go there and be able to have some, and at least end his career on a better term as opposed to where it's at now. But who knows, man?
Yeah, look, the NBA season is going to get very interesting. Not only the in-season tournament, but you got the Christmas Day games when the NBA kind of really steps into the forefront of the sports world. You have All-Star game, which actually there's some news in that. I guess I didn't even think about bringing that up on here, but it looks like we're going back to East versus West in the All-Star game, and Adam Silver even left it open for our USA versus the world in the All-Star game. I think that'd be interesting. I do think it does add a bit of intrigue having, American born versus international players. That could create some, I don't know, not animosity or anything, but some interesting because I think a lot of the American born players are starting to see these international players are coming in. They're winning MVPs now. They're being seen as top notch players in the league. A lot of people think, international players have a more well rounded game than American players. So that could create an interesting matchup if they do go to that. I think that's probably going to be some years down the line. He's probably going to want to see does East versus West fix anything. And then if that doesn't do it, then USA versus the world might be the last
it might do
effort. And then at that point, I don't know, we can do like all-star versus guys in the stands. I just don't know what Silver's going to do at that point.
Just announce the all-stars and they'll play the game so they get the accolades, but don't play the game. I like the East versus West coming back. I never liked the idea of picking teams. Like when they did the draft and they picked the teams, I don't want to sound like because I love the NBA, but like I just didn't care. I was just I like East versus West. I do like the idea of potentially doing a USA versus the world. I think it could create, like you said, not animosity, but a competitive spirit between them. Because when you think like, name me your top 5 NBA players and, quick reaction, the top, 4 guys are European players, at least last year, where you have Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Embiid. Those are like 4 guys that are at least worst case scenario, top 7 players, and they're all foreign born. Like they are coming into the league and they're just better. The best guys in the league are foreign players. It would be cool to see that, but at least going back to East versus West gives a little bit of familiarity and kind of just makes more sense as opposed to, Team LeBron versus Team Kevin Durant. That just felt cheap, I guess. Maybe kind of hokey is probably the better word. And so I like that call.
John, I'm loving it. Porzingis, top 5 player. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go that far yet, but Porzingis is looking good. I did not know he was that kind of 3-point shooter. Like, it's kind of effortless. He's shooting from the logo with no problem. We're not going to turn this into a Celtics show. I could be here for 4 hours talking about them. But yes, I guess we're kind of ready to go to the NFL now, but another quick word from the network.
Hey guys, it's Pavel the Cat.
And Evan Rev Reynolds.
And we are Two Guys in Hockey Talk. We are here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to talk all things hockey. What do we talk about, Evan?
We talk KHL, AHL, ECHL, every HL hockey league you can think about, prospects, juniors, even the professional women's hockey league.
Yeah, we love it. And we have a website, Two Guys in Hockey Talk. So give us a follow. We got articles on all things related to hockey, and we're writing all throughout the season. So make sure you tune in. We're also on X or Twitter. You can find me at hockey_2, and
you can follow me at RevanEv. Or you can also go to twoguysandhockeytalk.com to follow everything.
We love hearing from you guys, so make sure you tune in, comment, like, give us a follow on our Facebook and YouTube page. We love hearing from you guys, and it's a blast talking all things hockey. Right, Evan?
Hey, man, it is. So, as we say every show, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your sticks on the ice. Cheers.
Cheers.
There you go. Make sure you tune into that show as well. It's Wednesdays after Wire to Wire for all your hockey news and notes. Definitely a great show. But yeah, so like I said, let's go ahead and get into the NFL. Week 9 just happened. Rod was in here earlier throwing some shade at my guy, Mac Jones.
Is he your guy? Like, do you still want him to be your guy?
I don't know. I'm in a weird place right now. I don't know what's going on.
Because look, like for when I've had Jameis Winston in the past and Andy Dalton, coming off of Drew Brees, like we've both lost our legendary quarterbacks. Yeah. I could at least be like, look, like Jameis is our guy. I'm going to root for him, but he's not the guy that I want. I'm never going to call him my guy. Right. Derek Carr is like slowly starting to kind of win me over after the rough start. But like, man, if I'm you, like I'm looking at finding a secondary team to kind of help the interest because it's not pretty, man. Mac Jones is Like, at what point do you bench him? Do we want to start there? Do you think he's in risk of being benched?
I would say no. I feel like if he was going to get benched, it would have happened. I
Okay.
think they're just going to ride it out with him. Then the offseason, I don't know, because they already said at the trade deadline, at least from the reporters, they didn't get any interest. So I doubt they're going to get any interest in the offseason for him. I mean, I don't know. Do they try maybe one last thing of, maybe firing Bill O'Brien? You got Josh McDaniels out there who every time he gets fired from a head coaching job finds his way back to the Patriots staff as a coordinator, and maybe see if that's the last thing to get Mac Jones going. I could be down for that because at least at that point you're like 1 year left with Mac Jones. They're probably not going to pick up his fifth year option. You could draft a young guy to kind of sit behind him because that's what you're doing anyway. And even in that front, I was like all on board for tank for Caleb Williams. I don't even know if I'm there anymore. I don't know. Like I said, it is a weird space for Patriots fans because I still watch them. They're not like getting blown out. It's just that it's always like something late in the game that just doesn't go well. Against
and
Washington.
It's usually related to Mac Jones. It's usually like some really bad decision that he makes. And look, I'm gonna say you can't. It's not just as simple as the Patriots have one problem and it's Mac Jones. Like it's not that. They have their O-line's not healthy. They don't have. They need better weapons for the receivers. The play calling has been a little questionable. The running back that had the big run last week. His name just
Ramondre
Stevens. They don't seem to use him enough, and he's a really good back. There's questions all around there, but if you don't have the right quarterback, all those little other problems you can't overcome. And I guess the real question is, are they just going to keep with Mac Jones? Because right now they're tied for the second worst record in the league. There's, a couple, I think there's two teams with one win and then everyone else has two. The other ones have two. Do you just go for hope to get top 5 pick? Maybe it's not Caleb Williams, but it's one of these other really good quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's rough. And I get that it's a weird space that, Patriots really aren't used to, but like you've said before, it happens. You knew it was going to happen. You're not upset about that part of it, but it's a weird spot. But I just don't think Mac Jones is just the guy. I don't think it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's there. Bill O'Brien isn't not the right coordinator either, but you can't just keep changing coordinators year after year after year and expect your quarterback to succeed. There's no track record of a quarterback that has consistent change like that being successful in the NFL. So it's a delicate balance.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks. You really need to give these guys multiple years to see if they succeed, but quarterbacks just have to be good right away. And we've seen other quarterbacks be good. And so I think it's time for them to kind of move on and look for the draft. The real hot take kind of question is, should the Patriots fire Bill Belichick, which is preposterous and ridiculous, but you're going to start hearing those rumblings if they keep losing these games and end up with 4 or 5 wins.
Yeah. And if I'm Belichick, I look, at this point, Belichick should go full heel turn, walk up to press conferences, play some type of music behind him that's just I don't care anymore. he already gives short answers now. He should just literally just sit there at this point, not even say anything, and then just walk out. I'm along the lines of Bill Burr, who, look, is a well-known Patriots fan, comedian, love him. I think somebody actually asked about this the other day, and his response was, give it a rest. And I'm there with him because I cannot see how all the years that Belichick had where he was dominant, and now all of a sudden it's throw all that away and you just got to get rid of him. They just won a Super Bowl not that long ago. It was just 4 or 5 years ago?
Yep.
I can handle this period of time that we're going through because like you said, I knew it was coming once Brady was no longer a Patriot. I think some people somehow thought that I guess it was going to kind of turn back to when Brady first got there, like the first 3 Super Bowls where, Brady didn't get a lot of credit. It was more about Belichick and the team around him. I guess they thought that was what was going to happen with Mac Jones and they were going to continue the success. I didn't. And like I said, what we're seeing now, it's tough to watch, but I get it because I go into these games now wondering how good Demario Douglas is. And he keeps showing me week in and week out he can be a legit wide receiver. I go into it looking at, I was excited for Christian Gonzalez this season, but he got hurt.
That injury sucks, man.
Yeah.
Gonzo, I made the case when we did our draft pick that Gonzo was the best corner over Witherspoon in Seattle, and he's a stud too.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing that injury was rough for you guys, and obviously the Judon injury was just a real killer too.
Yeah, so I mean, things like that, and then Stevenson is definitely a player I like. I was going into these games like, let's see what Zeke has, and I think when given the opportunity, like Zeke Elliott shows that he can still run. He's probably not like your 30 carry a game guy, but he can still get you yards.
He's still a good back. He's proved that he has value.
And with all the weird stuff of this year, the one area that the Patriots are actually better is like red zone efficiency.
Somehow.
Which is one of the weirdest things because they struggle to score, but when they're able to make it in the red zone, they're like automatic in scoring touchdowns. I don't know how that's possible, but it's just where they are right now.
Sure.
And like Patriot fans are like looking at the rest of the schedule and seeing like what's their record going to be. I don't even know. I mean, at this point, they're probably going to be like a 5-6 win team, maybe. But then that's Patriots fans will be upset because that's not going to be good enough to get a top pick. And hold on, are you mad about Mac Jones play or your special team play? I mean, special teams. Who's really worried about special teams at this point? Like, if your season is a failure because of your special teams, then you probably have some deep underlying issues within your roster. I don't even look. Last week against Washington, Juju has to come with that catch. It went through his hands, it led to an interception, but everybody's looking at it as, oh, Mac Jones failing at the end of a game again. Like, Juju literally made that same catch a few plays before, and then this time goes through his hands. So I'm not going to put that on Mac Jones. Like I said, I just don't know anymore. I mean, if they start next week with Zappy or Will Greer, who I think is on the roster somewhere, I wouldn't care. I would still watch and be like, I'm like with Bill Belichick. He says one of the more frustrating seasons for him, and I get it.
It has to be really hard. And, you can't fire him. He's, worst case scenario, he's a top 3 coach of all time. Like, you could, if you're really a Patriots hater, like, you could think, oh, well, the thing that gets me more than anything is that they're giving so much more credit to the past to Brady and not as much to Belichick. Mm-hmm. You look at their 6 Super Bowl wins and they're they went to, I think it was 9 total Super Bowls. How many of those Super Bowl wins was Belichick had the bigger impact? The first 2, like, I know the Panther game kind of got turned into an offensive scoring game really in the second half, but it was still, Brady hadn't evolved yet. The Eagles' first Super Bowl, I can't really remember, but I felt like that's when Brady started to turn a new leaf. But also later in the career against the Rams, like with Jared Goff, that was a defense. Tom Brady did not play well in that game, and they still won the Super Bowl. The only time where really you could say Bill Belichick failed in the Super Bowl was against the Eagles, the second time where they allowed like 500 total yards and let Nick Foles just run all over him. But other than that, he's been good in a lot of these games. So that's a part that's frustrating from a historical standpoint, is people are discrediting Bill Belichick because Tom Brady left and found success. But the game changes, and eventually a roster or organization has to feel the effect of free agency and salary cap, and those things turn over. And Bill Belichick just can't take everything with him to a new team like Tom Brady did. It just doesn't work that way. So that's the part that irritates me. And as far as like the firing, the only thing I would deem acceptable in this offseason is if Bill Belichick is no longer the GM, they find a way to amicably bring someone else in there, because we've talked about this a ton. You can't do it. You can't have both jobs. You just, no matter how good and how legendary you are, it just never works out for you to be both head coach and GM.
Right. And I mean, we know why everybody's talking about the downfall of Belichick, because he's not a media darling. He doesn't give you sound bites. He's not all that. He's not Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan, no matter how bad the team is, if you go to a press conference, he's gonna give you something to write about. Belichick, you have to kind of like cryptically search through to find a quote. So we all know that's from. But look, I mean, I guess we'd call that a week 9 overreaction. Let's keep it going. Are there any more overreactions from this past week that you have?
I got one, and I don't love it because I like the player that this is about, but this is something I'm starting to believe in a little bit more and more. Geno Smith was a one-year wonder.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like saying that because I love the story of Geno Smith, but like, go back to last year, Seattle started really hot, and they had a late game in Europe, and after they came back, he kind of wasn't the same. They lost more games. His game play kind of declined, and he's never been able to get those first like 8 weeks of last season back. Look, last week was bad. This is where the overreaction really comes in, because the offensive line wasn't good. They couldn't protect him, but he didn't look right. He didn't look very good, and this team is just, they're not what they should be, and it feels like they're a quarterback away from being what they really could be. I don't like saying this. I feel kind of icky saying that, but the more evidence we have, the more evidence that we have week after week, it's like, man, was that just a one-year wonder? Because he wasn't. We also have all the evidence before last season of what he was and how he really didn't ever amount to anything as far as being a legitimate, good starting quarterback. So that's one overreaction I don't love, but it's something I'm definitely feeling.
So John did put up there, he thinks Bieniemy, Brian Johnson, the Eagles OC, Rich Bisaccia would be, in his opinion, the top 3 they would look out outside of Vrabel if Belichick is fired, which, of course, Jory with the perfect timing said, Patriots need to leave Herb Vrabel alone. So I will say, look, I do think Vrabel would be on that short list, but to go with Jory's point, I think Tennessee would be dumb to let Vrabel even get to that point of the conversation.
You can't.
Looking at candidates if Belichick were fired, or he knows not going to get fired, be like mutually parting ways.
Sure.
Robert Kraft loves Jerod Mayo, who's like the linebackers coach, assistant defensive coordinator. I do believe Robert Kraft in that if Belichick probably like this offseason or next offseason is gone, I think Mayo's the guy.
I could see that. That could be good.
Yeah, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Brian Johnson is interesting, but I feel like Brian Johnson's probably going to get a job this offseason, whether it's like Chicago or hopefully Chicago, because Chicago needs an offensive mind. Hopefully that's where he ends up, but if not, I wouldn't be mad at that. And Bieniemy's probably going to get that Washington job. I don't
probably would be, because they have a good owner now in Washington. Like, they have a smart owner. He's probably going to go there. And Bieniemy's style doesn't fit for what New England historically can do and would want to do. So I don't see that happen quite as easily.
Yeah. So for me, it's probably Vrabel, sorry, Jory, or it's just going to be Jerod Mayo, because that just seems like Robert Kraft wants it to be. Has the downfall started for Daniel Jones now?
It started last year. Last year.
Downfall for Daniel Jones. My overreaction, I'm starting to come around on Josh Dobbs. I did not like Minnesota necessarily going and getting him, because I was like, you could go get Teddy Two Gloves, Bridgewater. You could get everybody's favorite trade target, Mariota, and I think that'd be fine. But for what he did in Atlanta, yes, I know it's Atlanta, but it was in Atlanta. That is key.
I was going to say it was in Atlanta, and they played good at home.
Because Atlanta plays well at home. He gets there 4 days later, is thrown into the game because Jared Hall gets hurt. And what he did Sunday was nothing short of surprising to me. He made plays with his arm. He made several plays with his legs, even though Falcons still can't tackle in key moments. But the fact that he got that win, it now makes me more optimistic in my pick early in the season of the Vikings winning that division, even though the Lions are still leading it. But
It gives you a little hope.
yeah, because it seems like the team kind of fell in love with Dobbs during that game as well, knowing the situation he was in. You know, when Dobbs went into the game, it could have turned into a turnover fest because he doesn't know the players and all that. But he fought and got them to win, and I think that's only going to make him better and that team better in the weeks ahead. So that's my overreaction. Anthony has a good one.
Yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud.
CJ Stroud is having himself
dude's
a good
legit,
year.
Man.
Yeah.
Like when I talk about CJ Stroud, a smile comes up on my face. I have to hold back like a dropping like an F-bomb. Like he's the freaking man. Like the Texans got the quarterback right. He's finally been able to kind of shed this. There's a perception that Ohio State quarterbacks just don't do good in college or in the NFL from college.
Yeah.
He's shedding that. He has a good head on his shoulders. The team seems to love him. Like I was feeling it pretty early, but after what he did against Tampa, like it's like, man, he's legit. He's the best quarterback out of this class for this year. And he's probably, I'm going to say, it's probably going to overall be the best one. The only one, maybe Anthony Richardson, because of his crazy high potential. But as far as like CJ Stroud over all the other guys have been drafted, Will Levis, the guy for the Panthers, his name just left me. Like he's better than he's the top guy. Bryce Young, thank you. He's going to have a better career, absolutely. So yeah, they nailed it. Super happy for Houston too, by the way. Super happy for him.
Overreaction: Green Bay win and Jordan Love.
Man, I'll tell you what, man. Jordan Love it's not looking good. It's not looking good.
I still think he should be, I guess, the guy there for the next couple of years because this is basically his rookie year. I don't know these expectations that just because he sat behind Aaron Rodgers, he's supposed to hit the ground running. I didn't believe in that. I feel like you have to give him next year to really see if he's the guy or not. That's where I'm at with Jordan Love. I don't know if the Packers are going to be that patient with him, but that's where I'm at with him.
Yeah, I'll put it this way: the play calling hasn't been great to help him. It hasn't been a really good, well coached offensive scheme because the first half of this for the Packers, they just seem to be terrible on offense, and then the second half they seem to open up and he's able to actually play really well or play better at least. But it's not about the win-loss record for Green Bay. It's about evaluating Jordan Love and if he's the guy. And I know this is technically his rookie season, but he should be developed a little bit more than other rookies because he did have time to practice and learn his system. I don't think he's the guy. You have to go throughout this year. You can't bench him because, like, I don't know who their backup is, but it's not going to matter. You have to stick through this season and see where if there's any signs of hope. I don't think he's the guy, though. And I didn't think he was the guy when the Packers drafted him in 2020. I thought it was a poor pick and it was a bad move.
I mean, when they took him, it was definitely a development type guy.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to, fault a team for trying that because you never know. Maybe you strike the guy who becomes the next it guy and you could turn around and say, look, we found him and, you guys passed on him. But yeah, now it's obviously looking like maybe they should have gone with a more established guy. It's the draft is definitely a crapshoot. You win some, you lose some, and you just have to be able to be big enough to say we made a mistake and try to correct.
We made a mistake. Yep.
Yeah. John said, told y'all don't sleep on that Houston game. Wonder how much Panthers are kicking themselves in the butt for not getting the man rookie of the year Stroud instead of that other bum Bryce Young. I mean, that was the conversation. I was one of those who was on CJ Stroud being number one, but I understood
you and I
why.
both were.
Yes,
you and I both were.
That's true. We were. Yeah. And I understood why a lot of people were like Bryce Young because, Bama, he was seen as the better leader and everything. I get that. But, Stroud to me just seemed like maybe just for physical reasons alone, the guy I would trust before Bryce Young. I hope Bryce Young turns it around as well. Would love to see him, do well and not become like a Justin Fields type where it looks like he's a bust even though the situation around him may not be the best for him right now.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Justin Fields, is this could be no right? Is he not the guy? Because there's been moments where the Chicago Bears offense has been moving a little bit better with, I don't even know the name of this guy. The Saints. I watched the Saints play the Bears. They're my team. Watched the highlights. I can't remember the quarterback's name, and they scored 14 points on the Saints defense, which is a good defense, really fast. Like Justin Fields, felt like they can never really get it going, and they keep having these random dudes put up stuff. Oh, I hate saying this overreaction, but maybe Justin Fields just isn't the guy.
I mean, look, I've been definitely higher on Justin Fields. I'm not going to say
be good.
For me, get him an offensive coach, and then we can have the conversation. Until they do that, I'm not going to really put a lot of blame on Fields right now. That's why I'm like the Brian Johnson part. If he gets that job, okay, now we can start saying, what does Fields look like under an offensive mind? And if he doesn't get it then, sure, let's say he's a bust and you got to move on.
But here's the better question, Kyle, is Justin Fields going to have enough time to get a new head coach? Because if the Bears don't play well and the Panthers don't play well, like, are they going to pass out one of these great quarterbacks when they have two really great draft picks and just hope? Like let's say they get Ben Johnson from Detroit, like this great offensive mind that everyone is just really wanting to go. Like, you have to take a new quarterback if you have like the number 1 and the number 4 pick. You can't just not take a quarterback in those two spots when there's so many question marks around your guys. So it's just
that's true. Panthers don't have one because the Panthers lost theirs to the Cardinals.
Yep, to the Cardinals.
So maybe Bryce Young is safe because they don't have a first-round pick.
What hurts Bryce Young more than anything is the talent that they had to give up in order to draft him number 1. Not only were they a bad team, they gave up all that stuff. So look, I still think CJ Stroud's a better player, but Bryce Young definitely has the inferior talent around him.
So, I mean, Anthony might have an overreaction to go with your overreaction. Think Seattle will draft a quarterback this year.
I think that's a fair take. I don't think if Seattle can't get can't win a playoff game, I think that they try and move up and get draft capital to get a quarterback.
Yeah. Come on, Gino, turn it around.
I want Gino to do good. I'm not going to hate on quarterbacks. I'm going to have one more different overreaction where I'm not hating on a quarterback. I think the Bills missed the playoffs. That's my overreaction.
That's not an overreaction to me.
You don't think, okay, because they're 5-4. You look at their stroll, there's a path for them to get 10 wins pretty easily. That's also a path for them to get 8 wins. I haven't liked what I've seen from them. The defense has definitely stepped back. A lot of that's due to injury, and it sucks. Like, Milano is one of my favorite guys to watch. He's super good, so I get that part. But this team just doesn't really have it, and I think they're going to miss the playoffs. And I had them winning 11 games. I had them win the division, and I think they're going to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, yes, that's an overreaction. I had the Dolphins winning the division, and I think I had the Bills finishing 3rd in that division. I can't remember who I had 2nd. Probably the Patriots, but we don't need to worry about that part of the prediction. Johnson had the Browns making the playoffs before the Bills. I did as well, and I even like that more that Watson's back, and they actually looked decent this past week.
It was against the Cardinals, but still.
I just need Watson to mentally check in, because during this time when he was out, I was kind of worried about some of the stuff coming out. Like, does this dude actually want to play football?
Yeah.
So
it was weird.
If he can lock in, I think the Browns will be fine. But I agree with you. Yeah, Buffalo, I don't think they make the playoffs. And I guess my last overreaction before we go to picks, because we're coming out to the last 20 minutes of the show. Cowboys fans, we need to stop this where you guys hype up these big matchups and then y'all no-show it. I mean, I get it. The Niners one was probably worse than the Eagles game, but it's another game where the Cowboys had an opportunity late to make a play, and what did they do? They peed down their leg.
They imploded 100%.
Yeah, and I just can't look. I get it. Cowboys are a big brand and everything, but we need to put the Cowboys in the bin of show me before we change the narrative. Kind of like what John asking Lamar, make it all season. The Ravens are in that same boat. I don't care what the Ravens do in the regular season. Until we get to the playoffs, then I'll start paying attention to them. And if Lamar makes it all season, okay, they'll check the first box.
Then I'll believe it.
And until then, we need to calm down the Ravens hype. I'm seeing stuff like Lamar runaway MVP, Ravens Super Bowl favorite or something like that. Like, how can we sit there and say that when we see them, what they had over a year when they won 12 games, were a number 1 seed, and lost opening weekend? So we got to see how this plays in the playoffs, especially when you're going against better teams who know what they're going to do over the course of regular season. And if a team goes into Baltimore and stops like that running game, can Lamar make enough plays with his arm to win you a game?
Right.
John said, I think
that was the only game.
That was the only game I blame Dak. Oh.
Yep.
Eagles can beat both against Washington and Cowboys. They could have. Yes, I mean, look, the Eagles aren't dominant. I definitely agree with that, but they're finding ways to win, and because look, I saw with the Patriots, they weren't
Philly.
Great every. Yeah, go ahead.
Philly to me is kind of turning into what New England used to be, where they make sure they don't lose, they find ways to not lose, and teams around them implode. Like, it felt like for the Patriots, teams always made the bad holding penalty, the bad false start, the dumb play at the worst possible time. Like, they got scared. And it feels like teams do that against Philly now, where they're kind of turning the team where they don't lose it, and somehow the other team blows it, like we saw with Dallas on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. All right. I don't know. Did you have one last one before we get to week 10?
I don't have an overreaction, but I do want to get your take on the Steelers, because I was really high on the Steelers this offseason, and I just don't know what to make of them because they have a winning record. I think they're, 5-3? And I just don't know what to make of them, and I just don't know if I'm taking crazy pills, but I need someone else to talk to me. Like, what do you see with the Steelers, man?
So I think with the Steelers, the way you're going to have to look at it is, obviously they're a defense-first type of team. So as long as defensively they can keep teams to like 20 points, I think they're fine. But once you start getting like 26, 27 points, I don't know if the Steelers have enough to do it, because Pickett, I just can't pencil him in for a certain, great performance. He'll have games where he looks really good and you'll be like, okay, that's why Pittsburgh picked him. Then you'll have games where it's like, is this guy a bust and he'll never figure it out? So many questions with the running back position. Is Warren better than Harris? Harris should be the better guy, but what's going on with him? They had Deontay Johnson on IR for a little bit. He's back now. So does that open it up at the passing game? But then it's like Matt Canada, everybody wants fired. There's so many questions on their offense, where defense, you know what you're getting. TJ Watt's going to be a menace, and they're just going to find ways to keep the offense in the game. It's just whether or not Pickett or Harris or one of them can step up. It might come down to Pickens. I've seen games where Pickens gets bottled up and their offense can't do anything, and then there's games where he breaks loose and the team looks much better.
Yep.
So I think grand scheme of things, I think Tomlin finds a way to get them to 9 wins. I don't know if that makes the playoffs or not, but I'm not going to pick them ahead of the Bengals, the Ravens, or the Browns. Maybe in another division, if you put them in the AFC South,
and they might win that division.
Yeah, would they give the Jaguars a run for their money? Probably. Tennessee would. Tennessee's kind of a similar team, where there's so many questions circling around, but some weeks they just find ways to win games, and you can look at Tomlin and Vrabel as the reasons why. 2 really good coaches who players play for. So the Steelers, if they're going to win, they're going to win based off some of their parts, not necessarily because they have great players all over the place. And I guess it's just the Steelers culture. And they have a great home field advantage with their crazy stadium and the open end and what it does to kickers and everything like that. which I think mentally weighs on other teams when they go in there. I mean, I get what you're saying because the Steelers are one of those.
They make no sense.
They really don't, and I guess it's the fast. Like if you looked at this and the way this season's gone, if I told you they were 5-3 and second in the AFC North, you'd probably be like, not a chance. But here we are. They are, I think, they're the first wildcard team.
Yeah.
And I could not tell you one great performance all around from the Steelers this season.
Yeah, top to bottom. Yeah, no. Yeah. And here's the thing. If you would have told me they'd be 5-3, I would have believed you because remember, I was on the Pittsburgh hype train. I was super high on them. I picked Kenny Pickett to be a top 10 quarterback as far as yardage goes. Like I was all in on the Gatorade. Mm-hmm. And they don't look great. If you go like to Twitter or Reddit where their fan base is, they feel like their team is terrible, but they're 5-3. And
they all hate Matt Canada, but they hate 5-3.
And it's not even the Matt Canada hate. Like there's just hate. Like they just hate this team. But I think it was John that said it in the chat that it comes down to Mike Tomlin. It's the same way with like how the Eagles are now. They don't lose those games. They don't find ways to lose. They make sure that they find ways to stay competitive, and it's weird and it makes no sense. And they're probably going to get to the playoffs and then get absolutely obliterated. But it's nuts because they're 5-3, and you think I would be thinking that was 100% right, but they just don't look anything like the team that I expected them to be on offense. On defense, you knew they'd be good, but on offense, it's like what is this team? So I know we got to get to our picks, so I'll let us go there. But I just had to have that. Have that conversation because Pittsburgh makes no sense. They make no sense.
I'm sure it's something we'll definitely pick up week in and week out. Like just looking at the playoff picture, all the wild cards are the AFC North teams, which kind of crazy to think about.
It's
Pittsburgh,
nuts.
Cleveland, and Cincinnati are all 5-3. The first team outside of, I guess, on the bubble, Buffalo at 5-4, which we talked about. I mean, you think that they're going to miss the playoffs now. I kind of picked them to miss the playoffs to begin with.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll definitely see, but it's definitely something we'll revisit in the coming weeks. So before we get to our picks, another quick word from the network.
Hey y'all, I'm Key.
And I'm Jory, and tune in to Hoop Dreams and Touchdown Queens every Saturday at 5 p.m. over on Sports Empire Network.
And don't forget, also watch us on Roku TV at Northeast Streaming Productions. So tune in.
All right. Oh, I think you're muted, Kyle. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, it was just playing again in my ear. I was just like, threw me off. But
that's weird.
Yeah, like I said, another quick word. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into these picks. We're coming out to the last 10 minutes. We'll call it the lightning round. I'm going to steal that from Gene from Sideline to Sideline. We did it 1 week, and I was here for it.
Let's do it.
So I'll just give you the game, the line. We'll make our picks, and we'll keep it moving. So Thursday night, okay. I mean, this might have been a game that would have interested you before the season because it would have been Bryce Young versus Justin Fields. Now, not so much. But we got Panthers at the Bears. The Bears are a 3.5-point favorite. How do you see this one going?
Man, this is like a poop-fecta game, like to steal a term from Bill Simmons. This is like the worst. This is Thursday Night Football. I'm gonna take the Panthers. I don't believe in the Bears. I don't feel good about taking this. Don't bet this game. Please don't bet this game. Yeah. I'm going to go on a limb and just say the Panthers cover. I don't know if they'll win, but it's bad. I feel ugly saying this. I don't want to make a pick.
No, I don't either. I'll go. You know what? I'll go Panthers as well. Let's say Bryce Young and crew find a way.
They're kind of due for a good game, like show up on national TV, right?
Yeah, they find a way to beat Badgent or Bajent, however you want to pronounce it, and the Bears. I don't know.
John, I said don't bet this game.
Betting 100. Come on, man. I mean, hey, John, if you're betting this game, then you might have to call that hotline, man, because you went too deep. You went too deep. I mean, that's nothing to joke about, but But yeah, so we got the Panthers in that one. John has the Bears. Hey, John, you have to tell us next week. How'd that bet go for you?
For sure.
At what point did you tear that ticket up and just you already
Just
bet?
cry.
Oh, well, now I'll be watching thinking John's $100 are either flushed down the toilet or he won big.
Yep.
All right, so Sunday night we have okay, kind of an interesting one. We got Jets at Raiders. Zach Wilson versus I guess Aiden O'Connell at this point. The Raiders are a 1.5 point underdog at home. So how do you see this one going?
Oh man. I mean, this again, this could be a great game before the season started, but this is just going to be ugly.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm going to take the Jets to cover.
Right.
I think their defense travels well. They're going to have, home field isn't super big for the Raiders. The Raiders had their good performance after the head coach fires. You never want to bet against a team that just had a head coaching change. We saw it with the Colts. I think it was the Colts last year when they hired Jeff Saturday. They ended up actually beating the Raiders. They've already had that week
last year with Jeff Saturday.
and everyone made everyone's like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
So you don't bet against the team that just had the coaching change. So I'm going to take the Jets to cover. I think this team, they're going to try to kind of rally, but they know it's a done season, and the Jets still have something to play for. They're still trying to stay in it. So I'm going with the Jets.
Okay. I'm gonna take the Raiders in this one. I just think I guess the whole thing with Antonio Pierce coming in, getting rid of Josh McDaniels, I think there's a little bit of a honeymoon phase. Zach Wilson is still kind of struggling offensively. I see this one being a very close game. 1.5 point spread makes sense, but I'll take the Raiders in this one slightly better because one, it's in Vegas, and two, Wilson running that team offensively still worries me. So I'll take the Raiders. But this is another game I would stay away from in terms of bets.
Yep.
Monday night, this is a rough week for the NFL, so be prepared, everybody.
Not the prettiest.
So Monday night we got Broncos, Bills. Bills are a 7.5 point favorite at home. So how do you see this one going?
Man, this is one. Man, I don't like this one. Like, are they going to flex out? They should have flexed out Sunday night's game for something else because we need a good primetime game. My gut tells me that I need to take Denver, take the points. But I just feel like there's no way that Buffalo is going to just keep having these bad games week after week after week, especially knowing the schedule that they have ahead of them, which isn't easy, which isn't a cakewalk. They need to really kind of get their game together. I'm going to take the Bills to cover. I know 7 is kind of a lot, but I think, I don't know. Denver's in a weird spot too, where some weeks they look really good. Some weeks they don't. I'm going to take Buffalo and just go with it. And we'll go from there.
I think I'm calling the Broncos in the 7.5. I think the Broncos are coming off a bye, I believe. Yeah, the Broncos didn't play last
they
week.
should be. Yep.
So I do think that for Buffalo right now, it's a bit of a snowball effect with them where I think it's just a lot going bad right now, starting with Tre'Davious White getting hurt, then it was Milano, then it's the play on the field, and it's the Allen shoulder injury kind of coming back or whatever, if that's affecting him. I mean, they may win the game, but I think Denver's going to make it very antsy for Bills fans. So I'll take the Broncos in the 7.5. Maybe it's the half that does it. Maybe it's just a touchdown win, but that half point, I'll take the Broncos. All right, so now locks and upsets, which, I mean, that's might be a tough ask as well. So I guess for people listening or watching, I'll let you know the lines of the other games, and then we'll give our picks. So we got Colts, Patriots, which will be over in Germany, which apparently Chiefs, Dolphins was a success over there. I mean, Germany loves football, so yeah, they'll be fine. Patriots are taking the home team, 1.5 point underdog there. You got Niners, Jaguars. The Jaguars are a 3-point underdog at home. You have Saints, Vikings. The Vikings are a 2.5 point dog at home. Apparently, it's a theme for this week, underdogs at home. You got Titans Bucks, but the Bucks are a 1.5 point favorite at home. Ravens are a 6 point favorite at home over the Browns. Interesting there. Bengals are a 6.5 point home favorite over the Texans. Sorry. We have the Steelers, who we just talked about, as a 3 point favorite at home over the Packers. The Cardinals are a 1.5 point dog against the Falcons at home. Well, that's probably Falcons being a favorite on the road is interesting.
Right.
We have the Chargers as a 2.5 point dog at home to the Lions. The biggest line of the week. The Cowboys are a 16.5 point favorite over the Giants at home. Giants have their own issues. Seahawks are a 6 point favorite at home over the Commanders, and that's it. So where do you want to go? We'll start with our locks. Well, actually, because of the time, you can give your lock and upset.
Okay. Yeah. So my lock of the week is, where was it? Oh, it's Detroit over the Chargers. 2.5 points. I think Detroit, they want to get back on track. The Chargers have a really bad defense. They don't have a home field advantage. I don't really believe in the Chargers very much as a team. Herbert's great. Don't like the rest of the team. I really like this Detroit team. And my upset, I hate saying this, but I want to try to win these competitions. Mm-hmm. I think the Vikings upset the Saints. I think they got a good quarterback. They got some good players. The Saints don't play great on the road. And the Saints, they just, ever since the NFC Championship game in 2009, 2010, they've played poorly against the Vikings. They're my team. I feel gross saying this, but looking at everything else that's there, I think the Vikings pull off the upset.
That's not bad.
I thought about the Giants because that 16
points effect. So yeah,
that 16 points is tasty. But then, who's their quarterback going to be? Because everyone's hurt. So that was the determining factor that deterred me away from that.
Okay, I can see that. All right,
let's get your picks.
Let's see. All right, so I'll go with. No, I'm not gonna touch that one. All right, so my upset. I'm actually going to take the Chargers plus the 2.5.
Okay. It's kind of a last hope for the Chargers. If they don't get this, their season might be done with their schedule. So that I could totally see them doing a kitchen sink kind of game for sure.
Mm-hmm. And, a lot of the issues with the Lions, home versus away, they're just so different. And I think the Chargers are starting to figure it out offensively. Defensively, still going to be a question for them, but I could see them getting the win there. And then for my lock, I will take. I've already said, we're not doing that game. I might be inclined to go Steelers -3 over the Packers.
That's not a bad one. Steelers are going to make Jordan Love's life really miserable, and Steelers they got some momentum, and I could see that going for sure.
Yeah, look, it's going to be an interesting week. Our picks are kind of different, so we'll definitely. I'll have the graphic up next week for the picks and everything to kind of remind everybody.
Yeah, cool.
So John put some picks in here. You had the Colts, Jags, Vikings, upset for Houston. Best game is going to be Browns versus Baltimore. I agree.
That's going to be a good game. Yep.
Anthony said his lock, Lions, Chargers, upset, Arizona beating the Falcons. I could see it. I could definitely see it.
I would have gone there if Josh Dobbs was still there, but with that trade there, then it's hard to go from. But yeah. No, we're short on time, but look, I'll just say, great show. Thanks everyone for being there. I'll let Kyle kind of take us out, but fantastic show, fantastic week.
Yes, like Jake said, definitely a great show. Hopefully we'll have a little more people on next week. But definitely appreciate all of you in the chat. Anthony, John, Key, Jory, Daniel. I'm sure there's others I missed. If you watch it back later on, definitely appreciate that as well. Make sure if you want to see a replay, Northeast Streaming Sports Productions over on Roku TV tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. If you want to watch it back, definitely appreciate all of you. So we're going to get out of here. Make sure you're back next week, 7 p.m. for another edition of the Big Three. Enjoy the rest of your night. We will see you next week. We're out of here.